Back in 1987, Lethal Weapon redefined the buddy cop genre with raw action, sharp humor, and characters that felt unforgettable. But nearly 4 decades later, a far more unexpected story emerges. From red carpets to hash battles, its cast's lives have changed in ways few could imagine. Let's discover how dramatically everything turned out in 2026. Mel Gibson as Martin Riggs. Mel Gibson was born on January 3, 1956, in Peekskill, New York. At 31 years old, he played Martin Riggs, the suicidal, reckless LAPD detective in Lethal Weapon, 1987. The role injected raw pain and volatility into the film, turning a standard buddy cop story into something darker, angrier, and unforgettable. That haunted intensity on screen came from his experiences in real life. Gibson's childhood was marked by emotional instability and strict control. As the 6th of 11 children, raised in a rigid Catholic household under his father, Hutton Gibson, he grew up amid fear, repression, and internal conflict. Later, he suddenly moved from the United States to Australia at age 12 only, deepening his sense of displacement. And by his teens, alcohol had already become an escape from depression and rage that he barely understood. His personal life later mirrored that inner chaos. Gibson married Robin Moore in 1980, and together they had 7 children, but their 31-year marriage collapsed after infidelity scandals and substance abuse issues. The divorce was finalized in 2011 and reportedly cost Gibson over $425 million, one of the most expensive settlements in Hollywood history. A subsequent relationship with Oksana Grigorieva ended in allegations of domestic violence, leaked audio recordings, and criminal charges that nearly erased him from the industry. Behind the scandals was a man battling serious illness. Gibson has openly acknowledged severe alcoholism and has been linked to bipolar disorder, explaining the extreme mood swings that fueled both his creative highs and public meltdowns. He admitted to suicidal thoughts in his 30s and entered rehabilitation multiple times, struggling for decades to regain control while filming major projects like Braveheart and The Passion of the Christ. Today, Mel Gibson is 70 years old. He continues working primarily as a director and producer, carefully rebuilding his legacy after years of exile, most notably with Hacksaw Ridge. His estimated net worth remains around $425 million, a fortune earned at great personal cost, carried by a man whose most famous role was, in many ways, a reflection of his own fractured soul. Danny Glover as Roger Murtaugh. Danny Glover was born on July 22, 1946, in San Francisco, California. At 41 years old, he played Roger Murtaugh, the seasoned, family-oriented veteran detective in Lethal Weapon, 1987. His grounded human performance balanced the film's chaos, giving emotional weight and warmth to a story driven by violence and loss. That calm strength was forged through years of quiet struggle away from the camera. His early life was shaped by hardship and fear. Diagnosed with epilepsy as a child, he endured frequent seizures that made daily life unpredictable and humiliating. Growing up in a racially divided America, with parents active in the NAACP, he faced both medical vulnerability and social pressure, learning early how fragile stability could be. His marriages reflected the strain of a demanding career. Glover married Asake Bomani in 1975, and they had a daughter, Mandisa, but the relationship ended in divorce in 2000 after 25 years. A later marriage to Eliane Cavallero also ended quietly in 2022, underscoring how years of activism, travel, and filmmaking slowly eroded his personal foundations. Health remained a lifelong battle. Glover famously learned to control his epilepsy through self-hypnosis, and by age 35, the seizures stopped entirely. The experience deeply influenced his career choices, pushing him toward roles rich in moral struggle like The Color Purple and To Sleep with Anger, and toward humanitarian work with UNICEF and global anti-racism causes. Now, Danny Glover is 80 years old. He remains active as an actor, producer, and human rights advocate, appearing selectively in film while dedicating much of his time to social causes. With an estimated net worth of $40 million, Glover stands not as a fallen icon, but as a survivor, someone who turned illness, fear, and injustice into quiet, lasting strength. Darlene Love as Trish Murtaugh. Darlene Love was born on July 26, 1941, in Los Angeles, California. At 46 years old, she played Trish Murtaugh, the warm, sharp-witted anchor of the Murtaugh family in Lethal Weapon, 1987. Her presence grounded the franchise emotionally, giving the chaos of police work a human home to return to. That emotional steadiness was earned through her real life. Growing up as Darlene Wright, the eldest of 5 children, she was raised in a poor neighborhood of Los Angeles by her father, Joe Wright, a pastor, and her mother, Ellen Maddox, a domestic worker. Money was scarce, racial tension was constant, and responsibility came early. For her, singing in church choirs was not only a spiritual duty, but also a way to help hold the family together, and music became the one place where pressure softened into purpose. Her personal life followed a similarly demanding rhythm. Love married Leonard Peet in 1959 and had 2 sons, Marcus and Sean, but the marriage ended in 1968 amid the strain of an emerging music career. A second marriage to Wesley Mitchell produced a 3rd son, Jason, before ending in divorce in 1981. Stability finally arrived with her 3rd husband, Alton Allison, whom she married in 1984, a partnership that endured while she balanced family with an unpredictable industry. While Love did not battle public illness, her struggles were quieter and cumulative. Years of touring, industry exploitation, and delayed recognition took an emotional toll, especially after her early hits like He's a Rebel brought fame without credit. That long fight for acknowledgement shaped the dignity she later carried on screen and on stage, particularly during her resurgence and induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Today, Darlene Love is 85 years old. She lives a quieter life while remaining a celebrated musical icon, occasionally performing and reflecting on a career that finally received its due. With an estimated net worth of $5 million, her legacy rests not in wealth alone, but in resilience. An artist who endured obscurity, found recognition late, and became unforgettable. Traci Wolfe as Rhiann Murtaugh. Traci Wolfe was born on December 27, 1960, in Plainfield, New Jersey. At 27 years old, she played Rhiann Murtaugh, the impulsive, strong-willed daughter in Lethal Weapon, 1987. Her performance added youthful tension and emotional stakes to the franchise, making the danger feel personal rather than abstract. That authenticity reflected a young woman already navigating adulthood early. Raised in an urban New Jersey environment, Wolfe's childhood was shaped by the pace and pressure of city life. She entered the public eye at a young age through modeling with Wilhelmina models, learning discipline and self-control long before stepping onto a film set. That early exposure sharpened her confidence but also accelerated her loss of anonymity. After appearing in all 4 Lethal Weapon films and earning an NAACP Image Award, she stepped away from acting in 1998, choosing family life and community work over continued fame. Her later, selective return in projects like She Said reflected intention rather than necessity, a controlled re-entry on her own terms. As of 2026, Traci Wolfe is 66 years old. She remains selective with roles, balancing acting with a private life built far from celebrity culture. With an estimated net worth of $2 million, her story stands as a quiet contrast, proof that stepping back can be just as powerful as staying in the spotlight. Steve Kahan as Captain Ed Murphy. Steve Kahan was born on August 6, 1939, in New York City, USA. When Lethal Weapon premiered in 1987, he was 48 years old, portraying Captain Ed Murphy, the exhausted authority figure constantly trying to rein in chaos. His stern presence became a familiar face across the franchise. That commanding screen presence was shaped by his early years growing up in New York. This intensity of an urban upbringing likely influenced his natural gravitation toward disciplined, authoritative roles. A crucial factor in his life was family. Kahan was the cousin of director Richard Donner, a relationship that would quietly shape the course of his career. Kahan's acting journey began with a small but notable role in Superman, 1978, directed by Donner, where he played Armus, a detective tailing Lex Luthor. From there, he became a recurring figure in Donner's films, appearing in no fewer than 14 projects. His most recognizable role remained Captain Ed Murphy in all 4 Lethal Weapon films from 1987 to 1998, where his weary expressions and restrained frustration became part of the series' emotional rhythm. Though rarely cast as a leading man, Kahan carved out a steady career as a dependable supporting actor. He appeared in films such as Scrooged, 1988, The Goonies-era contemporaries, Conspiracy Theory, 1997, and later 16 Blocks, 2006, which became his final screen appearance. Television work also filled his resume, often placing him in recurring authority roles that mirrored his film persona. Sadly, he passed away on August 4, 2019, in Sherman Oaks, Los Angeles, just 2 days shy of his 81st birthday. At the time of his death, his estimated net worth stood at around $3 million, earned quietly through decades of consistent work. His legacy lives on as one of Hollywood's most recognizable commanding faces. Mary Ellen Trainor, as Stephanie Woods. Mary Ellen Trainor was born on July 8, 1952 in San Francisco, California. When she appeared in Lethal Weapon in 1987, she was 35 years old, playing Dr. Stephanie Woods, the sharp and empathetic LAPD psychiatrist. Her role added emotional intelligence and psychological depth to a franchise dominated by explosions and bravado. She would later become one of the most familiar supporting actresses of late 20th century Hollywood. That emotional clarity on screen reflected an early life shaped by curiosity and communication. Growing up in California came with its own pressures, though she kept much of her childhood private. Trainor studied broadcast journalism at San Diego State University, initially setting her sights on media rather than acting, a path that sharpened her observational skills and natural screen presence. Her career began behind the scenes as a production assistant on 1979, directed by Steven Spielberg. Acting soon followed, with early appearances on television, including Cheers and her big-screen debut in Romancing the Stone, 1984. She gained widespread recognition as Irene Walsh in The Goonies, 1985, then solidified her place in pop culture through Lethal Weapon, Die Hard, 1988, and Ghostbusters 2, 1989. Trainor became known for portraying intelligent, grounded women in high-stakes worlds. Her filmography included Scrooged, 1988, Death Becomes Her, 1992, Forrest Gump, 1994, Congo, 1995, and Freaky Friday, 2003. Several of these films, including The Goonies, Die Hard, and Forrest Gump, were later selected for preservation in the National Film Registry, underscoring her quiet but lasting cultural impact. In her personal life, Trainor married director Robert Zemeckis in 1980, and the couple had one son, Alexander, before divorcing in 2000 after 2 decades together. She later battled pancreatic cancer, a diagnosis that ultimately claimed her life on May 20, 2015, at the age of 62. At the time of her passing, her estimated net worth was $5 million, and her legacy endures as a reminder that strength on screen often comes from intelligence, restraint, and humanity. Damon Hines as Nick Murtaugh. Damon Hines was born in 1976 in Los Angeles, California, USA. At 11 years old, he played Nick Murtaugh, the eldest son of Roger Murtaugh, in Lethal Weapon, 1987. Though small in screen time, his presence gave the film an emotional anchor, reminding audiences what was truly at stake behind the gunfire and danger. That sense of responsibility on screen mirrored the reality of growing up inside Hollywood itself. Damon's childhood was shaped by early exposure to film sets, tight schedules, and adult expectations placed on a boy still forming his identity. Starting as a child actor meant growing up fast, often trading normal school days for scripts, auditions, and long hours under studio lights. He began acting at a very young age, appearing in The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai, Across the Eighth Dimension, 1984, before landing the role that defined his youth. As Nick Murtaugh, he appeared throughout the Lethal Weapon franchise from 1987 to 1998, and later showed up in films like Scrooged, 1988. Despite being surrounded by long-term Hollywood success, Damon chose a quieter path as he grew older. Rather than chasing fame into adulthood, Hines stepped away from acting, a decision that surprised many. The pressure of child stardom, combined with a desire for stability, led him toward education instead of red carpets. He eventually pursued medical studies, deliberately distancing himself from the industry that had defined his earliest years. Today, Damon Hines is 50 years old. He lives a private life far from Hollywood, having built financial security from his early acting career with an estimated net worth of $5 million. His story stands as a rare example of a child star who walked away not because he failed, but because he chose something else. Ebony Smith as Carrie Murtaugh. Ebony Smith was born on September 16, 1978 in Puerto Rico. At 9 years old, she played Carrie Murtaugh, the sharp-witted daughter of Roger Murtaugh, in Lethal Weapon, 1987. Her role added warmth and realism to the Murtaugh family, subtly balancing the film's violence with humor and innocence. That natural confidence came from a childhood marked by constant change. Raised between cultures as a Puerto Rican-American child, Ebony grew up moving frequently for auditions and roles. Her career began early with appearances on The Jeffersons, 1984, quickly followed by her long-running role in the Lethal Weapon series from 1987 to 1998. She later expanded into genre television, notably playing Melila in Xena, Warrior Princess, 1995. Behind the scenes, she pursued education seriously, earning degrees in film production and Chinese language, and becoming fluent in Mandarin. Unlike many former child actors, Ebony made a decisive turn away from entertainment. In 2002, she stepped back from acting to study psychology, driven by a desire to understand the emotional struggles she had witnessed both in herself and others growing up in the industry. Her real-life father being a police officer also gave her a grounded view of authority, trauma, and mental health. Now, Ebony Smith is 48 years old. She now works as a psychiatrist, helping others navigate the emotional complexities she once lived through herself. With an estimated net worth of $500,000, her success is measured less by fame and more by purpose. Gary Busey as Mr. Joshua. Gary Busey was born on June 29, 1944, in Goose Creek, Texas, USA. At 43 years old, he played Mr. Joshua, the cold-blooded enforcer and main antagonist, in Lethal Weapon, 1987. His unhinged intensity turned the film's villain into a terrifying symbol of chaos, raising the emotional and physical stakes for every character on screen. That ferocity did not come from nowhere. Busey's early years were shaped by instability, poverty, and constant relocation as his family searched for work. Raised by a construction engineer father and a homemaker mother, he learned early how fragile security could be. This understanding later seeped into the volatility of his performances. Before acting defined him, Busey was a musician, playing drums for Leon Russell under the alias Teddy Jack Eddie. His breakthrough came with the Buddy Holly story, 1978, earning him an Academy Award nomination and the National Society of Film Critics Award. By the time he embodied Mr. Joshua in Lethal Weapon, following films like Silver Bullet and Eye of the Tiger, Busey had mastered characters who lived on the edge of control. His personal life was equally turbulent. Busey married 3 times, first to Judy Helkenberg from 1968 to 1990, with whom he had a son, actor Jake Busey, later to Tiani Warden from 1996 to 2001, and he also has a daughter, Electra, with Stephanie Sampson. These relationships unfolded alongside addiction struggles, emotional instability, and a lifestyle that often mirrored the recklessness of his screen personas. In December 1988, a motorcycle accident without a helmet left Busey with permanent brain damage, altering his impulse control and behavior. He later battled severe drug addiction, survived sinus cancer surgery in the late 1990s, and was diagnosed with throat cancer in 2022. Today, Gary Busey is 82 years old, living largely outside mainstream Hollywood, with an estimated net worth of $500,000. Mitchell Ryan as General Peter McAllister. Mitchell Ryan was born on January 11, 1934, in Cincinnati, Ohio, USA. At 53 years old, he played General Peter McAllister, the calculating mastermind behind the conspiracy, in Lethal Weapon, 1987. His restrained, authoritative menace gave the film a chilling realism, proving that true danger often wears a calm face. That controlled presence was forged through a disciplined and demanding upbringing. Raised primarily in Louisville, Kentucky, by a salesman father and a writer mother, Ryan grew up in a household that valued structure but carried emotional pressure. These early tensions later translated into his ability to portray authority figures cracked by inner darkness. He rose to fame as Burke Devlin on Dark Shadows, 1966. His later work spanned decades, from Magnum Force and Electra Glide in Blue to comedic reinvention as Edward Montgomery on Dharma and Greg, showing remarkable range. His personal life was marked by endurance rather than spectacle. Ryan married Linda Morse in 1972, divorcing in 1982, and later married Barbara Albertine in 1998. He became a father to 3 children and a grandfather to 5, maintaining family ties while continuing steady work in film, television, and voice acting. Sadly, he passed away on March 4, 2022, at his home in Los Angeles, California, at the age of 88 due to heart failure. He left behind an estimated net worth of $5 million, earned through 6 decades of consistent work rather than superstardom. Tom Atkins as Michael Hunsaker. Tom Atkins was born on November 13, 1935 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, USA. At 52 years old, he played Michael Hunsaker, a disgraced former cop whose death ignites the entire story, in Lethal Weapon, 1987. Though brief, the role set the emotional fuse of the film, pushing the narrative into a spiral of corruption, revenge, and loss. That sense of quiet resignation was rooted deep inside him. Growing up in a working-class household in Pittsburgh, Atkins was surrounded by steel mills and long hours, raised by his father George C. Atkins and his mother Dorothy E. Williams. Drawn to dark stories and unsettling films from a young age, he developed an inner tension that later surfaced naturally in characters who carried weariness behind authority. His path into acting began not on screen, but on Broadway, where discipline shaped his craft. Atkins became a cult icon through horror classics like The Fog, 1980, and Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, 1982, followed by unforgettable performances in Night of the Creeps and Escape from New York. By the time he appeared in Lethal Weapon, his face already carried the weight of men who had seen too much. His private life reflected both stability and strain. Atkins married actress Garn Stevens in 1976, but the relationship ended in divorce in 1985 as his career intensified. A year later, he married Janice Lee Rogers, with whom he had a son, Taylor. Family became a grounding force as Hollywood roles arrived more selectively with age. Today, Tom Atkins is 91 years old. He lives largely away from the spotlight, occasionally appearing in genre projects and conventions with an estimated net worth of $500,000. Modest by Hollywood standards, yet earned through a career defined by longevity, grit, and unforgettable presence rather than fame alone. Jackie Swanson as Amanda Hunsaker. Jackie Swanson was born on June 25, 1963, in Grand Rapids, Michigan, USA. At 24 years old, she played Amanda Hunsaker, the tragic woman whose fall opens the film, in Lethal Weapon, 1987. Her shocking on-screen death became one of the most haunting openings of the franchise, instantly setting a brutal, emotional tone. That vulnerability was shaped early on. Swanson grew up in a close-knit Midwestern family, one of 4 siblings, surrounded by quiet expectations rather than show business dreams. Modeling at a young age offered an escape, placing her in unfamiliar adult environments that demanded confidence before it had time to fully form. Her career began unexpectedly with Prince's Raspberry Beret music video, a fleeting moment that opened Hollywood's door. After Lethal Weapon, she found lasting recognition as Kelly Gaines on Cheers from 1989 to 1993, turning innocence into comedy alongside Woody Harrelson. She later balanced acting with modeling, commercials, and stand-in work on major films like Contagion. Her personal life carried its own challenges. Swanson married professional volleyball player Andrew Smith, building a quieter life. In 2012, a serious car accident caused by a distracted driver left her with a concussion and injuries, forcing a physical and emotional recovery that reshaped her priorities. As of 2026, Jackie Swanson is 63 years old. She lives privately in California, rarely acting, but remaining connected to the industry through occasional projects and commercial work. Her estimated net worth stands at $1 million, reflecting a career defined not by excess, but by resilience after sudden fame and sudden trauma. Grand L. Bush as Boyette. Grand L. Bush was born on December 24, 1955 in Los Angeles, California. At 32 years old, he played Boyette, a sharp-edged supporting character in Lethal Weapon, 1987. Though brief, the role added grit and street-level realism to the film's violent underworld, reinforcing the sense that danger in Lethal Weapon came from ordinary faces hiding lethal intent. But growing up in Hollywood was far from glamorous for Bush. As the son of actor Robert Bush and Essie Bush, he was exposed early to an industry that promised opportunity but delivered instability. The pressure of expectations combined with financial uncertainty and a competitive environment shaped his childhood marked by discipline, pushing him toward classical training as a form of survival rather than privilege. Bush's personal life proved just as turbulent. He married Ramona Jean Bynum, but the relationship ended in divorce in 1991. Later, he found stability with Sharon Dahlonega Bush, whom he married in 1994. Like many actors navigating inconsistent work, balancing intimacy with an unpredictable career created emotional strain. In 2002, he stepped away from acting entirely and committed himself to medical studies, completing his education in 2010. The transition reflected a deeper desire for purpose and control after decades in an industry defined by uncertainty. Now, Grand L. Bush is 71 years old and lives largely outside the public spotlight, focusing on his work in the medical field after retiring from acting. With an estimated net worth of around $1 million, his legacy stands as an uncommon Hollywood arc, one where the final act was not fame, but reinvention. Ed O. Ross as Mendez. Ed O. Ross was born on July 5, 1949, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. At 38 years old, he played Mendez, the menacing and unpredictable antagonist in Lethal Weapon, 1987. His performance intensified the film's sense of chaos, grounding its action in a believable threat that contrasted sharply with the film's humor-driven protagonists. Ross's early years were shaped by tension and toughness. Of Czech descent, he grew up in a working-class environment where physical endurance mattered. He was frequently drawn into fights and competition, channeling that energy into boxing and baseball, eventually becoming a Golden Gloves amateur boxing champion. This experiences forged the intimidating physicality he later brought to films like Red Heat and Full Metal Jacket. Stability arrived later in his personal life. Ross married Veronica Talbot in 2000, and together they raised 2 children. After years of portraying violent criminals and authority figures, family life offered a counterbalance, grounding him away from the aggression that defined much of his screen persona. Today, Edo Ross is 77 years old and divides his time between New York City and Los Angeles, remaining selectively involved in acting and voice work. With an estimated net worth of approximately $3 million, his career endures as a testament to how raw intensity and lived experience can define some of the most unforgettable villains in action cinema. Nearly 4 decades after Lethal Weapon first exploded onto screens in 1987, its cast tells a powerful story of time, survival, and unexpected turns. So when you look at the cast today, who surprised you the most, and whose journey moved you the deepest? Leave your thoughts in the comments, hit like if you enjoyed this then and now breakdown, and don't forget to subscribe for more untold Hollywood stories.